Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, not to the thunder of hooves or the clash of steel, but to the quiet rustle of silk kimonos and the gentle whisper of bamboo whisks. Imagine, if you will, the flickering candlelight in a small, meticulously crafted room, the scent of simmering water, and the hushed movements of a master preparing a simple bowl of tea. You're there, kneeling on tatami mats, feeling the cool air on your face, perhaps a little sore from a long day of, well, being a samurai. You probably won't survive 5 minutes in their actual shoes, but we can at least get cozy with their downtime. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I always love to see how far these sleepy history lessons travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in feudal Japan, a land of intense beauty and even more intense conflict. For centuries, the samurai, those stoic, sword-wielding warriors, dominated the social landscape. Their lives were dictated by a strict code, Bushido, the way of the warrior, which emphasized loyalty, honor, and a readiness for death. They were the ultimate fighting machines, trained from childhood in swordsmanship, archery, and martial arts. Their days, for many, were a ceaseless cycle of training, patrolling, and all too often, combat. Think less meditative warrior monk and more highly trained, always on bodyguard, with a very sharp katana. It's a bit like imagining a modern special forces operative taking up knitting to relax, isn't it? Except, instead of knitting, they embraced something far more intricate and profound: the tea ceremony, or chanoy. This wasn't just about sipping a cuppa. No. This was a profound, almost spiritual practice that offered a complete counterpoint to the chaos of their daily lives. Imagine the psychological whiplash. One moment, you're on a battlefield, risking life and limb, every sense heightened to detect danger. The next, you're in a tiny, tranquil room, focused entirely on the artful preparation of powdered green tea. It's like going from a heavy metal concert to a Gregorian chant in a matter of minutes. The tea ceremony, in essence, was a form of mindfulness, long before the term became a trendy buzzword on self-help podcasts. It demanded absolute presence, a complete immersion in the now. Every movement, every gesture, every interaction with the utensils and the tea itself was deliberate, precise, and imbued with meaning. It was a stark contrast to the unpredictable violence of the battlefield, where split-second decisions often meant the difference between life and death. Here, in the tea room, time seemed to slow down, almost to a standstill. You weren't a samurai, a lord, or a vassal. You were simply a participant in a shared moment of beauty and tranquility. Historians still argue whether the tea ceremony primarily served as a genuine spiritual retreat, or if it also functioned as a subtle form of social maneuvering and display of refined taste among the elite samurai class. Perhaps it was a bit of both, a blend of inner peace and outer performance, much like many human endeavors, if we're honest. You know, like how your fancy coffee machine makes you feel sophisticated, while also just, well, making coffee. The very origins of chanoyu are rooted deeply in Zen Buddhism, which arrived in Japan from China. Zen emphasized meditation, intuition, and direct experience over scripture and dogma. For the samurai, Zen's focus on discipline, self-control, and the acceptance of impermanence resonated deeply with their warrior code. Death was a constant companion, and Zen offered a framework for facing it with equanimity. It taught that true enlightenment came not from grand revelations, but from the everyday, from the simple acts performed with complete awareness. What could be more everyday, yet more profoundly simple than preparing a bowl of tea? The earliest forms of tea drinking in Japan were fairly utilitarian, more for medicinal purposes, or as a stimulant for monks during long meditation sessions. Imagine monks trying to stay awake for their spiritual Netflix binges, except their Netflix was actually just sitting very still for hours. But over time, especially during the Kamakura 1185-1333 and Muromachi 1336 to 1573 periods, tea began to evolve from a simple beverage into an aesthetic and philosophical pursuit. It moved beyond the monastery walls and started to gain traction among the warrior class. They saw in its quiet precision a reflection of their own disciplined lives, or perhaps a refuge from them. One fascinating, quirky tidbit is that in these early days, tea gatherings could be quite rowdy affairs, known as tacha, or tea competitions. Participants would try to guess the origin of different teas, often accompanied by lavish food, sake, and even gambling. It was less about serene meditation and more about bragging rights and a good party. Picture a bunch of armored warriors, after a tough day of sword practice, gathering to see who can identify the most obscure tea leaf. Is that Yuji? No. Wait, the tannins are too. Wait, is that a hint of bamboo? It probably got quite competitive, perhaps even leading to a few honorable, albeit slightly tipsy, so not quite the serene image you probably have in your head right now. However, as Zen influence deepened and the aesthetic principles of wabi-sabi began to take hold, the tea ceremony gradually transformed. Wabi-sabi is a difficult concept to translate fully, but it embodies the appreciation of beauty that is imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It finds elegance in simplicity, authenticity in nature, and profound depth in the humble. A cracked tea bowl, mended with gold lacquer, kintsugi, becomes more beautiful, not less, because of its history and flaws. This philosophy dovetailed perfectly with the austerity and self-restraint valued by many samurai. It was a rejection of gaudy display in favor of quiet, understated grace. So, for a samurai, stepping into a tea room wasn't just a break. It was a deliberate act of shedding the external world. You would leave your swords outside, symbolically disarming yourself of your worldly status and your tools of violence. You would crouch low to enter through a small, almost childlike entrance, called a nijiraguchi, forcing humility upon even the highest-ranking warrior. It was a reminder that inside this sacred space, everyone was equal, united by the shared experience of tea. No power plays, no political machinations, just the gentle worry of the whisk and the soft gurgle of the kettle. For men whose lives were often defined by a rigid hierarchy and constant vigilance, this temporary egalitarianism, this serene detachment, must have been an incredible release. It was, in its own way, a profound act of self-care for the most formidable warriors. In Japan, as you continue to feel the quiet calm of the tea room settling around you, let's dig a bit deeper into just how these Zen roots truly intertwined with the evolution of chanoyu. It wasn't an overnight transformation. Rather, it was a gradual osmosis of philosophy into practice, much like how a slow-drip coffee brew eventually extracts all the nuanced flavors. Early on, as we touched on, tea was simply a practical tool for monks. It helped them stay alert during grueling meditation sessions, a sort of ancient, all-natural energy drink. But Zen wasn't just about staying awake. It was about achieving satori, a moment of sudden enlightenment, often found through rigorous self-discipline and meditation. The act of sitting, breathing, and focusing became paramount. Now, imagine a samurai, accustomed to focusing all their senses on the battlefield, the glint of an enemy's blade, the scent of smoke, the subtle shift in wind direction. Zen meditation offered a different kind of focus, an internal one, returning again and again to the breath, finding stillness amidst internal turmoil. The tea ceremony, in its burgeoning form, began to mirror this meditative process. Every step, from heating the water to serving the tea, became a micro-meditation, a chance to practice present moment awareness. The great Zen masters of the time, figures like Murata Juk, often considered the founder of the tea ceremony as we know it, and later Sen-no Rikya, didn't just teach about tea, they taught a way of life. They emphasized simplicity, humility, and the beauty found in the ordinary. Juk, in particular, advocated for the concept of wabi, which championed a rustic simplicity and quietude over the more extravagant tea gatherings popular at the time. He believed that the true spirit of tea lay in its unpretentious nature, in appreciating the subtle beauty of worn utensils and simple surroundings. It was a radical idea in an era often defined by ostentatious displays of wealth and power. Imagine telling a modern billionaire their true joy lies in a chipped mug and a slightly wonky table. They might look at you like you've been sniffing too many matcha fumes. This shift wasn't always easy. Some powerful samurai lords initially preferred the flashier, more social tea gatherings that demonstrated their status and extensive collections of expensive Chinese pottery. You can picture them, can't you? My tea bowl is from the Ming Dynasty. Darling, what's yours? But gradually, the quiet elegance of wabi cha, or wabi tea, began to gain traction, especially among those warriors who were seeking something deeper than mere material possessions. They found that the very discipline required for battle could be channeled into the peaceful, precise movements of the tea ceremony. It was a different kind of war, perhaps a war against their own restless minds. A mainstream historical fact here is that the Ashikaga shogunate, particularly Shogun Ashikaga Yoshimasa in the 15th century, played a crucial role in popularizing the artistic and cultural pursuits of Zen Buddhism, including the tea ceremony. His Jinkakuji, the silver pavilion, wasn't just a magnificent residence. It was designed with tea ceremony, rooms, and gardens that perfectly embodied the wabi-sabi aesthetic. It showcased how even the highest echelons of power were embracing this quiet philosophy. Think of it as the ultimate trendsetter, but instead of designer clothes, they were setting trends in humble elegance. Now, for a quirky or fringe tidbit, there's a legend that the famous tea master Sen-no Rikya, during his younger days, was taught by a Zen monk named Takino J. Jay reportedly asked Rikie to tend to his garden. Rikie diligently raked leaves, watered plants, and made everything immaculate. Jay then apparently shook a tree, causing leaves to fall randomly, and told Rikie this is what beauty truly is. This anecdote, whether entirely true or embellished, perfectly encapsulates the Zen and wabi-sabi emphasis on naturalness and imperfection, contrasting with a purely artificial sense of order. It's like your perfectly organized bookshelf suddenly being improved by a cat knocking a few books askew. Pure Zen, right there. The philosophical underpinnings of the tea ceremony truly gave it its profound power. It was built on 4 core principles often attributed to Zen: no Rikie, harmony, wa; respect, kai; purity, sei; and tranquility, yaku. These weren't just abstract ideas. They were meant to be embodied in every aspect of the ceremony. Harmony wa meant creating a seamless blend between the host, guests, utensils, and the natural surroundings. The aesthetic choices, from the scroll hanging in the alcove to the flowers in the vase, were all carefully selected to evoke a sense of peaceful unity. It's like curating the perfect playlist for maximum chill, except with centuries of philosophical weight behind it. Respect kai was demonstrated through every interaction: the bowing, the careful handling of the utensils, the quiet attention to each other's presence. It was about honoring the shared moment and recognizing the inherent dignity of all participants, regardless of their social standing outside the tea room. Imagine a samurai used to demanding immediate deference, having to respectfully acknowledge everyone as an equal within this space. It's quite the mental pivot. Purity, say, involved not just physical cleanliness, though the tea room and all its tools were meticulously spotless, but also spiritual purity. It was about clearing your mind of worldly concerns, of grievances, ambitions, and fears. It was a chance to wash away the mental grime of daily life, particularly the grime that comes from constantly being prepared to end another human life. And finally, tranquility yaku was the ultimate goal, the state of serene calmness achieved when all other principles were successfully integrated. It was the quietude that settled in the heart, a profound peace that transcended the often violent reality outside the tea room. This wasn't just about being relaxed. It was about achieving an inner stillness that could withstand external storms. For a samurai, this was invaluable training. Historians still argue whether these 4 principles were fully articulated and applied from the very beginning of the tea ceremony's more refined form, or if they evolved and solidified over time as the practice deepened its philosophical roots. It's one of those things where the precise historical timeline gets a bit blurry, like trying to remember exactly when you decided you needed that extra blanket for maximum sleep comfort. Was it always there, or did it slowly become an essential part of your routine? Think about the psychological impact of this on a samurai. Their life was one of constant vigilance, of being ready to draw their sword at a moment's notice. Their training focused on speed, precision, and overwhelming force. But the tea ceremony offered a counterbalance. It taught a different kind of focus, one that wasn't about threat assessment, but about aesthetic appreciation and inner peace. It was about slowing the breath, calming the mind, and finding beauty in the most understated of moments. Or who was anticipating one? The tea ceremony offered a crucial mental detox. It allowed them to step out of their role as instruments of war and reconnect with a more contemplative, human side. It was a space where the weight of their duties could be temporarily set aside, allowing for a moment of profound, almost sacred, respite. This wasn't escapism. It was a form of active self-cultivation, a way to maintain mental and spiritual equilibrium in a brutal world. It gave them an anchor, a quiet harbor in a sea of conflict. And for us, as we drift towards sleep, this concept of finding deep peace in small, intentional acts is perhaps the most soothing historical lesson of all. Stepping into the tea room, or chashitsu, was an experience designed to be transformative from the very first moment. You didn't just walk in like you were popping down to the local cafe for a quick brew. Oh no, this was a carefully orchestrated journey into tranquility, a deliberate shedding of the outside world, much like how you might dim your lights and put on soft music to prepare for sleep. Every element of the chashitsu was meticulously crafted to foster an atmosphere of peace, simplicity, and focused attention. Imagine yourself a weary samurai, perhaps having just returned from a long journey or a tense meeting. You approach the tea hut, often nestled in a tranquil garden roji, designed to cleanse both your physical and mental state. The garden path itself was not a direct route. It often meandered, perhaps with stepping stones placed unevenly to force you to slow your pace, to pay attention to where you placed your feet. This wasn't just an aesthetic choice. It was a psychological one, easing you out of the hurried, often dangerous rhythm of your daily life. It's a bit like those winding paths through meticulously manicured gardens in modern, tranquil parks. Except here, every pebble and moss patch had a deeper purpose. Before even entering the chashitsu itself, you would pause at a stone basin, the sukubai. Here, you would ritually cleanse your hands and rinse your mouth, symbolizing the washing away of the dust and impurities of the secular world. It's a simple act, but profoundly symbolic, like hitting the reset button before you embark on a new, more peaceful mode. You're not just cleaning, you're preparing to enter a sacred space. Even if that sacred space is just a small hut dedicated to preparing tea, then comes the most unique entrance, the Nijiriguchi. This was a very small, low crawl-through entrance, barely a meter high. To enter, you, as the guest, had to stoop low, almost on your hands and knees. This wasn't for convenience, quite the opposite. It was a deliberate act of humility, forcing everyone, from the lowliest commoner to the most powerful daimyo feudal lord, to bow equally upon entering. Your samurai swords, symbols of your power and status, would be left outside on a sword rack. Inside the chashitsu, everyone was equal, stripped of their social rank and their weapons. It's a pretty clever way to enforce humility, isn't it? Hard to strut around when you've just scrambled through a tiny door. Once inside, the design of the chashitsu itself was a masterpiece of minimalist aesthetics, embodying the principles of wabi-sabi. It was often small, intimate, perhaps only 2 or 3 tatami mats in size, creating a feeling of cozy enclosure. The materials were simple and natural, unadorned wood, plaster walls, tatami flooring. There was nothing flashy, nothing to distract the eye. The beauty lay in the texture of the materials, the subtle play of light and shadow, and the quiet harmony of the space. The main focal point of the chashitsu was often the tokonoma, an alcove, or recess where a single scroll of calligraphy or a simple flower arrangement ikebana would be displayed. The scroll might contain a Zen koan, a philosophical phrase, or a poem chosen by the host to reflect the season or the mood of the gathering. The flower arrangement would be simple, often just 1 or 2 blossoms, arranged to highlight their natural beauty rather than a grand, ostentatious display. This intentional scarcity of decoration forced your attention, guiding your gaze to appreciate the subtle details. It's the ultimate example of less is more. Lighting in the chashitsu was often subdued, relying on natural light filtering through paper screens, seiji, or the soft glow of a single lantern. This soft, diffused light further enhanced the tranquil atmosphere, blurring harsh edges and creating a sense of intimacy and calm. Imagine the contrast for a samurai accustomed to the harsh glare of the sun on a dusty battlefield, or the flickering, chaotic light of a campfire. The soft, gentle illumination of the tea room would have been a profound comfort. A mainstream historical fact concerning the tea room is that the design and construction of the chashitsu itself became an art form, with famous tea masters like Senno Rikyu personally overseeing or even designing some of the most iconic tea houses. Rikyu's own tea room, the Taian, located at Myakuyan Temple in Kyoto, is considered a national treasure of Japan and exemplifies the epitome of wabi-sabi aesthetics. With its tiny size and deliberate austerity, it's essentially the architectural equivalent of a deep sigh of contentment. Now, for a quirky or fringe tidbit, some very early chashitsu designs incorporated features that were surprisingly practical for a warrior's needs. For instance, there are historical accounts of tea rooms with hidden compartments or reinforced walls, perhaps as a subtle nod to the ever-present dangers in a samurai's life, even in moments of peace. It's a bit like having a panic room discreetly, disguised as a pantry, a silent acknowledgement that even tranquility needs a backup plan in turbulent times. Historians still argue whether such features were common or isolated to specific turbulent periods, and if they were for actual defense or merely symbolic of vigilance. The floor was covered with tatami mats, soft and yielding, inviting you to sit in a calm, kneeling posture, seiza. The very act of sitting this way, with a straight spine and grounded posture, naturally encourages a sense of stillness and focus. The silence within the chashitsu was also intentional. Conversation was minimal, hushed, and generally focused on the tea, the utensils, or the single piece of art in the tokonoma. This quietude allowed for heightened awareness of the subtle sounds, the gentle bubbling of the water in the iron kettle, the delicate whisking of the matcha, the soft scrape of a ceramic bowl. These weren't just sounds, they were part of the meditative experience, drawing you deeper into the present moment. The atmosphere fostered within the chashitsu was one of ichigo, ichi, a concept often translated as one time, one meeting. It emphasizes that every moment is unique and unrepeatable. This specific gathering with these specific people on this specific day will never happen again in exactly the same way. This awareness instilled a profound sense of preciousness and a desire to fully appreciate every fleeting instant. For a samurai whose life could be cut short at any moment, this philosophy resonated deeply, encouraging them to find profound meaning in brief periods of peace. It's like realizing that perfect sunset you're watching right now will never quite be the same, so you soak in every last ray. The design principles of the chashitsu were not static. They evolved over time, influenced by different tea masters and changing social conditions. Early tea rooms might have been grander, while later ones, particularly under Rikya's influence, leaned towards extreme simplicity. But the core purpose remained: to create a dedicated space where the mundane could be transcended, where noise and distraction were minimized, and where one could achieve a state of inner calm through the ritual of tea. For the samurai who navigated a world of constant tension, political intrigue, and potential violence, the chashitsu was more than just a place to drink tea. It was a haven, a psychological reset button. It allowed them to momentarily shed the heavy mantle of their warrior identity and simply be. The contrast between the outside world and the inner sanctuary of the tea room amplified its power, making those moments of tranquility even more profound. It was a place where they could cultivate a different kind of strength, the strength of inner peace and composure, which was arguably as vital to their survival and effectiveness as their prowess with a sword. The very air in the chashitsu seemed to vibrate with a different energy, an energy of quiet contemplation. You could almost feel the weight of your worries lifting as you settled onto the tatami, the subtle fragrance of incense, perhaps, or just the clean scent of fresh wood and tatami mats filling your senses. Every detail, no matter how small, contributed to this feeling of profound calm. It wasn't just a room, it was an experience, carefully curated to soothe the warrior's soul and prepare it for whatever lay beyond its humble walls. Now that you've had a glimpse of the meticulously designed sanctuary that is the chashitsu, let's turn our attention to the silent, yet profoundly expressive, characters within it, the essential tea utensils. These aren't just tools, they are imbued with history, philosophy, and an aesthetic reverence that elevates them far beyond mere functionality. Each piece, from the simplest bamboo whisk to the most cherished ceramic bowl, tells a story, and understanding their significance is key to truly appreciating the samurai's quiet journey into mindfulness. Imagine your favorite, most comforting mug. Now amplify that feeling by about 1,000. Add centuries of tradition and a dash of Zen philosophy. That's closer to what we're talking about at the heart of the tea ceremony, almost like the main character in this silent play is the chowan, or tea bowl. These bowls are often handmade, with subtle imperfections that are not considered flaws, but rather unique characteristics, embodying the principle of wabi-sabi. They might be slightly asymmetrical, have an uneven glaze, or show the faint marks of the potter's hands. Each chawan is unique, and its individual character is celebrated. The sensation of holding a warm, textured chawan in your hands, feeling its weight and contours, is an integral part of the sensory experience. Some bowls are designed to be cool to the touch, others to retain heat. Some are wide and shallow, others narrow and deep. The choice of chowan often depends on the season, the type of tea, and the host's personal aesthetic. It's a bit like choosing the perfect outfit for a specific mood, but with far more profound implications. Mainstream historical fact: the most prized tea bowls, particularly during the era of the samurai, were often those imported from China or Korea, especially those from kilns like Tenmoku or Edo. These bowls, with their rustic beauty and often naturally occurring variations, became incredibly valuable. sometimes even more so than land or gold. Owning a famous chawan could signify immense wealth, cultural sophistication, and political influence. Imagine a samurai general, fresh from a victory, not asking for more territory, but for a specific, slightly cracked tea bowl. It speaks volumes about the values of the time. Next, we have the chasen, the bamboo whisk. This delicate tool, carved from a single piece of bamboo, is essential for whisking the powdered green tea matcha into a frothy, vibrant liquid. The hundreds of fine tines on the chasen are incredibly fragile and require careful handling. The sound of the chasen whisking against the bottom of the chawan is one of the most iconic and soothing sounds of the tea ceremony, a gentle, rhythmic hum that signals the preparation is underway. It's like the gentle stirring of your own thoughts as you drift off to sleep. The precision required to carve a chasen is remarkable, reflecting the dedication to craftsmanship that permeated Japanese culture. Then there's the chashaku, the bamboo scoop used to transfer the matcha powder from the tea caddy into the bowl. This too is often handcrafted with a simple, elegant curve. Each chashaku is typically named by the tea master, a poetic moniker that reflects its form, the season, or a philosophical concept. This simple scoop, therefore, isn't just a utilitarian item. It becomes an object of contemplation, inviting guests to consider its unique qualities. It's a subtle reminder that even the smallest, most unassuming objects can hold profound beauty and meaning if you take the time to notice them. The natsume, or tea caddy, is where the precious matcha powder is stored. These can range from simple, lacquered wooden containers to exquisitely decorated works of art. The choice of natsume often reflects the host's taste and the formality of the occasion. Opening the natsume and seeing the vibrant green of the matcha within is often the first visual delight in the ceremony, a promise of the rich flavors to come. Water, the very essence of tea, is heated in an iron kettle, the kama. Often heavy and robust, the kama sits over a charcoal brazier. The sound of the water boiling in the kama, a gentle gurgle or a soft hiss, is called matsukaze, or wind in the pines, a highly appreciated sound that contributes to the tranquility of the tea room. Imagine a samurai used to the clang of steel, finding peace in the sound of boiling water. It's truly a testament to the transformative power of the ceremony. A quirky or fringe tidbit. It's said that some famous samurai, when asked what they valued most, would point not to their legendary swords or their family castles, but to a particular tea utensil, perhaps a chawan or a chashaku that had been passed down through generations or given to them by a revered tea master. These items, representing cultural refinement and inner peace, held a different kind of power, a power that transcended military might. There are even tales of tea masters risking their lives to save a prized utensil from a burning castle, sometimes prioritizing it over more conventionally valuable items. Historians still argue whether such stories are literal truths or more allegorical, emphasizing the deep symbolic value placed on these objects. The fukin linen tea cloth, shakin white linen cloth for wiping the tea bowl, and chasentate whisk stand are other essential tools, each handled with precise, deliberate movements. Every touch, every placement, is part of the choreographed dance of the tea ceremony. The beauty lies not just in the objects themselves, but in the way they are used the respect with which they are handled. This meticulous care for objects, even seemingly mundane ones, reflects a deep appreciation for the material world and an understanding that true beauty is often found in simplicity and careful attention. For the samurai, whose lives were often lived amidst destruction and chaos, the tea ceremony offered a stark contrast, a world of creation, precision, and preservation. The handling of these delicate utensils, the slow, deliberate movements, the focus required for each step, all served as a profound meditation. It trained their minds to slow down, to notice details, and to find beauty in imperfection. This was a different kind of discipline from the battlefield, but no less rigorous. It cultivated patience, grace, and an inner quietude that could be invaluable in times of stress. Think about the contrast. One day, you're sharpening your katana, preparing for a potential duel, every muscle tense, every sense on high alert. The next, you're carefully rinsing a delicate chowan, feeling the texture of the ceramic, focusing solely on the warmth of the water. This duality, this ability to shift from intense outward aggression to profound inward calm, was a hallmark of the truly disciplined samurai. The tea ceremony provided the perfect crucible for cultivating that inner balance. It was a space where the warrior could shed their armor, both literal and metaphorical, and simply engage with the present moment. These utensils, then, were more than just implements. They were conduits for a deeper experience. They facilitated a ritual that allowed the samurai to access a state of mind that was crucial for their mental well-being, and ironically, perhaps even for their effectiveness on the battlefield. A clear, calm mind, unburdened by anxiety or distraction, is a powerful asset in any situation, whether facing an opponent or simply facing oneself. And as you imagine these ancient, carefully crafted objects quietly waiting to be part of such a profound ritual, perhaps you too can feel a sense of their quiet power gently lulling you towards a peaceful rest. Having explored the tranquil space of the chashitsu and the profound symbolism of its utensils, we now arrive at the very heart of the tea ceremony itself, the preparation of the matcha. This is where the samurai's disciplined focus truly comes into play, a slow, deliberate dance of precision and presence. It's not just about making a drink. It's a meticulously choreographed ritual, each movement imbued with centuries of practice and philosophical depth. Imagine trying to perform surgery with the same level of calm and precision, except your patient is a bowl of green tea and your goal is inner peace. The ceremony typically begins with the host, dressed in simple, clean attire, entering the tea room with quiet grace. There's often an initial exchange of silent bows between host and guests, a moment of mutual respect that sets the tone for the ritual. You, as a guest, would observe every movement, every gesture, as a form of silent communication, a story unfolding before your eyes. The host first purifies the utensils. The chowan tea bowl is gently warmed and rinsed with hot water, then carefully dried with the shaken linen cloth. The chakan bamboo whisk is also warmed in the bowl, and its tines are checked for flexibility. This isn't just about hygiene. It's a symbolic cleansing, preparing the instruments to receive the essence of the tea. It's like a warm-up for the main event, ensuring everything is in perfect readiness. Next comes the star of the show, the matcha itself. This is not your everyday tea bag. Matcha is a finely ground powder of specially grown and processed green tea leaves, vibrant green in color, almost like powdered jade. The host uses the chashaku bamboo scoop to transfer a precise amount of matcha into the warmed chawan. Typically, 2 or 3 scoops are used for a thicker tea koicha, or less for a thinner, frothier tea. Every scoop is deliberate, a small waterfall of green powder settling at the bottom of the bowl. Mainstream historical fact. Matcha became popular among the samurai class not just for its spiritual associations, but also for its practical benefits. Being a concentrated form of green tea, it provided a sustained release of caffeine, offering mental clarity and alertness without the jitters associated with other stimulants. For warriors who needed to maintain focus during long periods of waiting or intense training, it was an ideal beverage. It's like their ancient energy shot, but with significantly more class. Then comes the water. Water, often drawn from a pure source and boiled to the perfect temperature in the kama iron kettle, is poured into the chawan. The temperature is crucial. Too hot, and it can scorch the delicate matcha. Too cool, and it won't whisk properly. The amount of water is also carefully controlled, typically just enough to create a paste with the matcha before more is added. The host uses a wooden ladle hishaku to pour the water with graceful precision, the steam rising subtly, carrying the faint, earthy aroma of the tea dot. Now for the iconic act, whisking. The chasen is introduced into the bowl, and the host begins to whisk the matcha and water with rapid, controlled movements, often in a W or M pattern. The goal is to create a smooth, luminous green liquid with a delicate froth chagama on the surface. This whisking is not just about dissolving the powder, it's about aerating the tea, bringing out its full flavor and creating a pleasing texture. The rhythmic sound of the whisk, the matsakaze we discussed earlier, fills the quiet room, a soothing lullaby of preparation. This act of whisking is a profound exercise in concentration and mindfulness. The host's entire being is focused on the bowl, the whisk, and the emerging tea. There are no wasted movements, no hesitation. It is a dance of efficiency and grace, a living meditation. For a samurai accustomed to the fast, decisive movements of combat, this slow, deliberate precision was a different kind of training. It cultivated patience, refined motor control, and demanded a complete surrender to the present moment. Think about it. Every stroke of the whisk is a breath, every bubble a tiny victory, a quirky or fringe tidbit. It's said that some tea masters could discern the exact mental state of the whisk person by the quality of the foam on the matcha. A choppy, uneven foam might indicate a restless mind, while a smooth, consistent foam spoke of inner calm and focus. It's like a tea leaf reading, but for your internal peace. Historians still argue how much of this was genuine observation versus a form of subtle psychological suggestion to encourage greater presence during the ceremony. Perhaps it was a clever trick to get even the most agitated samurai to really calm down and focus. Once the tea is perfectly whisked, the host presents the chawan to the first guest. The bowl is turned so that its most beautiful side, perhaps, a unique glaze or pattern, faces the guest. The guest receives the bowl with both hands, often admiring its aesthetics before taking a sip. There's a specific way to hold the bowl, to turn it, and to drink from it, all designed to show respect. To to the host and the tea itself. The first sip is typically small, savored, allowing the guest to fully experience the flavor and texture of the matcha. The taste of matcha is unique, often described as subtly bitter, yet rich and earthy, with a lingering sweetness. It's an acquired taste for some, but for those accustomed to it, it is deeply satisfying. The shared experience of this unique flavor, prepared with such care, further deepens the connection between host and guest. Cleansing of utensils to the final sip reinforces the core principles of harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. The harmony between the movements, the utensils, and the people. The respect shown to all elements of the ceremony. The purity of intention and action, and the ultimate tranquility achieved through this focused engagement for the samurai. This meticulous preparation and consumption of tea offered a profound escape from the mental burdens of their profession. It allowed them to practice a form of mental detachment from their identity as warriors. In the chashitsu, they were not generals, not lords, not killers, but simply participants in a shared, peaceful ritual. This temporary shedding of identity, this immersion in the mundane yet sublime act of tea preparation, allowed their minds to rest, to rejuvenate, and to find a clarity that was vital for their demanding lives. It taught them that true strength wasn't just about wielding a sword, but about wielding control over one's own mind, finding peace amidst chaos. And as you visualize the silent, graceful movements, the delicate whisking, and the calming green froth, perhaps you can feel that very same tranquility begin to settle over you, guiding you gently towards sleep. As the tea is prepared with such serene precision, a vital element of the ceremony, and one often misunderstood by outside observers, comes into sharp focus: the guest's silent role. You, as a guest in this tranquil setting, are not merely a passive recipient of tea. You are an active participant, albeit one whose participation is expressed through silence, observation, and subtle gestures of appreciation. It's a bit like being a key member of an orchestra, but instead of playing an instrument, your role is to listen with profound attentiveness, becoming part of the collective calm. Imagine yourself now, the freshly whisked matcha bowl presented before you, its vibrant green surface, a testament to the host's meticulous care. Your first act is often to admire the chowan itself. You turn it in your hands, observing its contours, the texture of the glaze, any unique imperfections that embody the spirit of wabi-sabi. This isn't just polite appreciation, it's a moment of mindful engagement, connecting with the craftsmanship and history of the object. You might notice a subtle crack repaired with gold lacquer, kintsugi, which highlights the bowl's history and resilience, rather than hiding its past. This deliberate observation forces you to slow down, to truly see, rather than just glance. There's a specific etiquette for receiving the bowl. You typically receive it with both hands, lifting it with a gesture of respect. You might then rotate the bowl slightly, so as not to drink from the front, the side the host presented as the most beautiful. This is a subtle act of deference, an appreciation, acknowledging the host's intention while respecting the aesthetic flow of the object. It's a silent conversation, a dance of manners that speaks volumes without a single word. Mainstream historical fact: the formal etiquette of the tea ceremony, particularly for guests, became incredibly refined over centuries. with specific rules, governing every movement, from how one enters the tea room to how one cleanses one's lips after sipping. These detailed protocols were not arbitrary. They were designed to eliminate distraction, foster mindfulness, and ensure a harmonious flow. They provided a clear framework within which true tranquility could be cultivated. Much like the rigid forms of martial arts allowed a samurai to achieve fluid, effective movement. Once you take your first sip, you do so mindfully, savoring the taste, the temperature, and the texture of the tea. The initial sips are often small, allowing the flavors to fully register on your palate. There's no rush, no gulping. This is a moment to experience the tea fully, to appreciate the unique blend of earthiness, subtle bitterness, and perhaps a hint of sweetness. The silence in the room allows these sensory details to come to the forefront. Unburdened by casual chatter, your only verbal contribution as a guest might be a quiet compliment on the tea. The chowan, or the host's skill, offered at specific, appropriate moments. These compliments are sincere and understated, never effusive or boisterous. They are acknowledgments of the shared beauty and effort. For a samurai, used to issuing commands or exchanging terse battle plans, this practice of restrained, polite appreciation was a different form of communication, one that relied on subtlety and mutual understanding. A quirky or fringe tidbit. It's said that some highly experienced tea guests could even discern the emotional state of the host by the subtle nuances in the tea's flavor or the way it was presented. Much like a skilled samurai could read an opponent's intentions by a slight shift in their stance. If the tea was slightly off or the froth less perfect, it might suggest a host struggling with inner turmoil. Historians still argue how much of this was genuinely possible versus a romanticized ideal of profound sensory perception within the tea ceremony. It's certainly a pleasant thought, though, isn't it? To be so attuned to another's presence through something as simple as tea. The guest's role also involves appreciating the atmosphere of the tea room itself. You might quietly observe the single scroll in the tokonoma, pondering its meaning. You might notice the arrangement of the flowers, the way the light falls through the paper screens. Every detail is placed with intention, and your role is to receive that intention, to let it wash over you without analytical judgment. This cultivated appreciation for aesthetic detail helped sharpen the samurai's senses in a different way, shifting their focus from external threats to internal beauty. The silence is perhaps the most profound aspect of the guest's role. In a world filled with noise and distraction, the chashitsu offered a sanctuary of quiet. This silence wasn't empty. It was filled with presence. It allowed for introspection, for a slowing of the frantic mental pace that often accompanied a warrior's life. It encouraged a deep, meditative state where thoughts could gently arise and recede, much like ripples on a calm pond. For a samurai, whose mind might be constantly replaying battle scenarios or political strategies, this enforced quietude was a radical act of self-care. It was a space to truly unclench their minds. Historians still debate whether the silence was primarily a practical measure to avoid distracting from the host's movements, or if it was fundamentally a spiritual practice inherited from Zen Buddhism, designed to facilitate a meditative state. It was likely a combination of both. where practicality and philosophy converged to create a uniquely profound experience. It's a bit like arguing whether your cozy blanket is for warmth or for emotional comfort. Probably both, right? The guest's disciplined presence also contributed to the overall harmony of the ceremony. By fully engaging with the ritual, by showing respect, and by maintaining a quiet, attentive demeanor, the guest helped to create a seamless, unified experience with the host. There was a shared understanding, a non-verbal agreement to participate in this moment of focused tranquility. This collective calm amplified the individual experience, creating a synergistic effect where the peace of one person contributed to the peace of all present. For the samurai, the tea ceremony was a crucial lesson in patience and self-restraint. These were qualities that were not always emphasized in their martial training, which often focused on aggressive action, but the ability to wait, to observe, to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively was equally valuable, both in personal conduct and in strategic decision-making. The quiet discipline of the tea room, therefore, directly contributed to the samurai's overall composure and mental fortitude, making them not just better warriors, but more balanced individuals. It was a subtle, yet powerful, form of psychological training, proving that sometimes the quietest moments are the most profound. And as you imagine yourself sitting in that tranquil space, feeling the warmth of the bowl in your hands, the gentle quiet settling over you, perhaps you can feel that same deep peace inviting you to drift into a deep and restful sleep. You've now settled into the quiet rhythm of the tea ceremony, feeling the gentle calm of the chashitsu envelop you. But to truly grasp the profound impact of this serene ritual on the samurai, we must first cast our minds back to the world they inhabited before they stepped through that tiny need. Imagine, if you will, the stark contrast between the tranquil tea room and the often brutal, chaotic reality that defined their daily existence. It's like stepping from a perfectly soundproofed meditation chamber directly into a mosh pit, if that mosh pit also involved very sharp objects and a constant threat to your life. The world of the samurai, particularly during the turbulent Sengoku, or warring states, period, mid-15th to early 17th centuries, was one of relentless conflict and pervasive instability. You weren't just a warrior, you were a cog in a vast, intricate, and often brutal feudal system. Your loyalty was pledged to a specific lord, a daimyo, and your life was entirely at his command. If he waged war, you waged war. If he ordered you to die, you died. There was no calling in sick when your lord decided it was time for a siege. Your days would have been filled with rigorous training, mastering the katana, the bow, the spear, and even unarmed combat. You would have spent countless hours perfecting your form, your agility, and your ability to deliver a swift, decisive blow. This wasn't just about physical prowess. It was about mental discipline, about honing your reflexes until they were instantaneous, your focus razor sharp. Imagine trying to thread a needle while riding a roller coaster. That's the kind of precision under pressure they trained for. Beyond training, there was constant vigilance. Castles were fortresses, always prepared for siege. Patrols were frequent, and even seemingly peaceful journeys could turn deadly with little warning. Every shadow, every rustle in the leaves could signal an ambush. The air was thick with political intrigue, shifting alliances, and the ever-present threat of betrayal. One day, your ally might be your enemy the next. It was a constant game of high-stakes chess, where the pieces were human lives, and the board was the entire country. Mainstream historical fact: the Sengoku period was characterized by nearly constant civil war among various daimyo for control of Japan. This era saw the rise of legendary figures like Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, who eventually unified the country. For the ordinary samurai caught in this maelstrom, life was often short, brutal, and unpredictable. Their primary purpose was warfare, and their skills were refined on countless battlefields. You weren't a samurai for the calm reflection. You were one for the effective application of violence. Death was not an abstract concept. It was a daily reality. You would have seen comrades fall, experienced the horror of pitched battles, and perhaps even participated in acts that would churn the stomach of any modern observer. The code of Bushido, while emphasizing honor, also demanded a readiness to commit seppuku ritual suicide rather than face dishonor or capture. This pervasive awareness of mortality, of the fleeting nature of life, undoubtedly colored every aspect of their existence. It's like living in a constant state of fight or flight, but with the added pressure of an ancient honor code. Imagine the sounds that filled their world: the clang of metal on metal, the roar of battle cries, the groans of the wounded, the drumming of war drums, the distant shouts of a besieged castle, the smells: sweat, blood, smoke, burning villages, the metallic temps of fear, the sights: shattered armor, broken bodies, devastated landscapes. This was the sensory overload they lived with, the constant assault on their nervous systems, a quirky or fringe tidbit. Despite the intense violence, even during the Sengoku period, there are accounts of samurai bringing tea sets, or at least the components for a simple tea ceremony, onto battlefields or into besieged castles. One famous story recounts Toyotomi Hideyoshi performing a tea ceremony just before a major battle, inviting his generals to partake. It wasn't just a moment of calm. It was a demonstration of his unshakable composure and resolve, a subtle psychological maneuver to inspire confidence in his troops and perhaps unsettle his enemies. Historians still argue about the frequency and true motivations behind such battlefield tea ceremonies, whether they were genuine attempts at spiritual grounding or elaborate displays of power and fearlessness. Either way, it paints a rather surreal image, doesn't it? A general calmly whisking tea while cannons boom in the distance. Beyond the grand battles, there was the mundane brutality of daily life. Punishments for infractions were often severe, justice swift and unforgiving. Feuds between clans could escalate into bloody massacres. Life for the common people under samurai rule was often harsh, marked by heavy taxation and forced labor. Even for the samurai themselves, life wasn't always glorious campaigns. It was also long periods of waiting, of bureaucratic duties, of managing their own small domains, all while being constantly ready for the call to arms. The emotional landscape of a samurai would have been complex. They were trained to suppress fear, grief, and personal attachment to maintain an unyielding stoicism. Yet they were still human. The psychological toll of constant exposure to violence, of making life or death decisions, of losing friends and family, must have been immense. How did they cope with such sustained pressure? How did they maintain their mental equilibrium when their very existence was defined by chaos? Historians still argue about the extent to which samurai genuinely embraced the Stoic ideals of Bushido, or if it was more of an aspirational code they struggled to live up to in the face of brutal realities. It's one thing to say you're not afraid of death. It's another thing entirely to face a charging enemy with unblinking eyes. This, then, was the canvas upon which the tea ceremony painted its strokes of peace. The very extremity of their external world made the quiet sanctuary of the chashitsu all the more vital. It wasn't just a hobby. It was a psychological lifeline, a deliberate counter-practice to the violence that permeated their lives. It offered a profound paradox. The most disciplined warriors seeking solace in the most disciplined form of peace. And as you imagine the overwhelming intensity of their world, perhaps you can better understand why the quiet, gentle act of preparing and sharing a bowl of tea could become such a powerful, almost sacred refuge. The contrast deepens the calm, doesn't it? Making the very idea of that peaceful tea room all the more inviting as you drift toward sleep. Given the chaotic, high-stakes environment, you just imagined a samurai navigating the very idea of them engaging in something as exquisitely calm and deliberately slow as the tea ceremony seems almost paradoxical. Yet, it is precisely this paradox of the warrior, the simultaneous embrace of extreme discipline in both violence and peace, that makes the samurai's relationship with chanoyu so profoundly fascinating. It highlights their complex inner world and their profound search for balance in an unbalanced existence. It's like finding a master chef who is also an expert bomb disposal technician, two wildly different skill sets, both requiring intense focus and precision, yet applied in diametrically opposite directions. For a samurai, their life was a constant exercise in control. They controlled their emotions, their physical movements, their loyalty, and their very destiny, or at least they strived to. The battlefield demanded absolute control under duress. One misstep, one flicker of hesitation could mean instant death. This external discipline was mirrored by an internal one, cultivated through Zen practices, which taught them to control their thoughts, to accept impermanence, and to confront fear with equanimity. The tea ceremony offered a different kind of control, a microcosm of perfect order in a macrocosm of chaos. Every movement, from the precise folding of the fukin tea cloth to the exact angle of the chasen whisk as it touched the chowan tea bowl, was prescribed. There was no room for improvisation, no allowance for sloppiness. This ritualized precision was not stifling. Rather, it was liberating. By surrendering to the form, the samurai could quiet their minds, allowing their trained hands to move almost instinctively, freeing their inner self from the constant anxieties of their profession. It was a moving meditation, a dance of deliberate intent. Imagine the sheer mental discipline required. You've spent years training to react instantly, to be hyper-aware of every external threat. Then you step into the tea room and your training shifts entirely. Now, your focus is on the gentle sound of boiling water, the texture of a ceramic bowl, the aroma of the tea. You deliberately slow your breath, your heart rate. This conscious shift, this ability to turn off the combat switch and engage in profound introspection, speaks volumes about their mental fortitude. It's the ultimate mental reset button, mainstream historical fact. Many of the great unifiers of Japan, such as Toyotomi Hideyoshi and Tokugawa Ieyasu, were not only formidable, warriors but also enthusiastic patrons and practitioners of the tea ceremony. They understood its power, not just as a cultural pursuit, but as a means of cultivating self-mastery and demonstrating their refined taste and inner composure. Hideyoshi, in particular, famously held grand tea gatherings, sometimes even outdoors, or on the battlefield, showcasing his unique blend of military might and cultural sophistication. He recognized that mastery of the sword and mastery of the tea whisk were both forms of power. The tea ceremony provided a crucial opportunity for introspection and self-reflection. In the quiet of the Chishitsu, stripped of their armor and weapons, samurai could confront their inner thoughts, their fears, and their aspirations. Zen Buddhism, which heavily influenced chanoyu, emphasized direct experience and the overcoming of the ego. The humble, simple nature of the tea ceremony facilitated this. There was no grandeur to distract from the self, only the ritual, the tea, and one's own mind. This deliberate self-examination was vital for maintaining mental health in a profession that could easily lead to psychological breakdown. A quirky or fringe tidbit: there are accounts of samurai who, after particularly gruesome battles, would seek out the quiet solace of the tea room, using the ritual as a form of purification or trauma processing. The meticulous cleansing of the utensils, the careful pouring of water, the focused whisking. These acts became symbolic of washing away the horrors they had witnessed and participated in. It was a form of self-therapy, a way to recenter their moral compass. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread practice or isolated to particularly sensitive or spiritually inclined warriors. But it paints a powerful picture of the tea ceremony's profound healing potential. The concept of mushin usin, or nomend, is central to both Zen and martial arts, and it found a perfect expression in the tea ceremony. Mushin is a state of mind where one acts spontaneously, without conscious thought, hesitation, or fear. In martial arts, it allows for fluid, instinctive action in combat. In the tea ceremony, it allows the host to move with effortless grace, each action flowing naturally from the last without conscious deliberation. The intense practice of the tea ceremony, with its repetitive, precise movements, trained the samurai to achieve this state of effortless focus, a state that was transferable to the battlefield as well. It's like when you're really good at something and your hands just know what to do without your brain having to micromanage every little detail. Historians still debate the precise philosophical connection between mushin in martial arts and its application in the tea ceremony. Was the tea ceremony a training ground for martial mushin, or was it a separate parallel path to achieving a similar state of enlightened presence? Perhaps it was both, a mutually reinforcing cycle of discipline and inner peace. The paradox extends to the very aesthetic of the tea ceremony, wabi-sabi. This philosophy, which celebrates imperfection, transience, and humble beauty, stood in stark contrast to the samurai's world of perfectly forged blades, gleaming armor, and grand castles designed to project unyielding power. Yet, in the tea room, they found beauty in a cracked bowl, in the uneven glaze of a ceramic piece, in the quiet decay of nature. This taught them to appreciate a different kind of strength, one that acknowledged vulnerability and the ephemeral nature of all things, including their own lives. It was a profound lesson in acceptance. For the samurai, the tea ceremony wasn't about escaping their reality. It was about mastering it from within. It was about finding a profound sense of self amidst the chaos, cultivating an unshakable inner composure by embracing the slow, deliberate pace of chanoyu. They found a vital antidote to the frenetic, violent rhythms of their profession. It allowed them to be both fierce warriors and contemplative aesthetes, embodying a unique blend of discipline, power, and profound inner peace. And as you consider this remarkable ability to hold such extremes in balance, perhaps you can feel your own mind settling, finding its own quiet balance as you drift towards a deep and peaceful sleep. As you settle deeper into the tranquil atmosphere, having contemplated the profound paradox of the warrior in the tea room, let's now immerse ourselves fully in the unique aesthetic philosophy that truly underpins chanoyu and resonates so deeply with its practice, wabi-sabi. This isn't just an artistic style, it's a profound worldview, a quiet rebellion against grandiosity, and a celebration of beauty that is humble, imperfect, and ephemeral. Understanding wabi-sabi is key to unlocking the true, soothing power of the tea ceremony, especially for the samurai. Imagine for a moment the pristine, symmetrical perfection often sought in Western art, a flawless marble statue, a geometrically precise garden. Now, completely let go of that image. Wabi-sabi embraces the exact opposite. It finds profound beauty in the worn texture of an old wooden beam, the irregular shape of a hand-thrown ceramic bowl, the subtle patina of age on a metal object. It is the beauty of things that are impermanent, incomplete, and imperfect. The aesthetic equivalent of finding comfort in that favorite, slightly faded old t-shirt rather than the brand new stiff one. The term wabi originally referred to the lonely, desolate feeling of living in nature, away from society. Over time, it evolved to signify a sense of simple, quiet satisfaction, a richness found in poverty, a profound contentment with little. It's about cultivating an inner state of peaceful solitude, finding beauty in austerity and rusticity. Think of a single moss-covered stone in a garden, its beauty enhanced by its age and its quiet, unassuming presence. That's wabi-sabi, on the other hand, refers to the beauty of age and deterioration, the elegance of natural wear and tear. It's about things that show the marks of time, the passage of use, the subtle effects of the elements. It's the beauty in the rust on an old iron kettle, the faded colors of an ancient scroll, the gentle cracks in a cherished tea bowl. These aren't flaws to be hidden. They are character marks, testaments to a long life, revealing the object's unique journey. It's the aesthetic equivalent of valuing the crinkles around your grandmother's eyes because they tell a story of a life well lived, mainstream historical fact. The aesthetic of wabi-sabi gained significant prominence during the period 1336 to 1573 and was further refined and popularized by tea masters like Murata Juke and especially Senno Rikya. Rikya, in particular, moved away from the ostentatious, often highly decorated Chinese tea wares favored by the elite, and championed humble, often locally produced Japanese ceramics that embodied the wabi-sabi spirit. This shift was revolutionary, challenging the prevailing notions of what was considered beautiful and valuable. It was a cultural pivot, proving that true value could be found in simplicity. For the samurai, wabi-sabi resonated on multiple levels. Their lives were often unpredictable and marked by loss. The acceptance of impermanence, a core tenet of wabi-sabi and Zen Buddhism, was a vital psychological tool. If life itself was fleeting, then finding beauty in the transient nature of things made that impermanence less terrifying, more profound. A blooming cherry blossom, exquisite but short-lived, was cherished precisely because its beauty was so ephemeral. This understanding helped them to face the fragility of their own existence with a measure of peace. Consider the objects within the tea room, the unadorned walls, the simple bamboo chasen, the rough texture of a chawan that might have a slight warp or an intentional crack. These imperfections were not accidents to be hidden. They were embraced, even highlighted. The practice of kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold lacquer, is the ultimate expression of sabi. The repair itself becomes part of the object's history, making it arguably more beautiful and valuable than before it was broken. Imagine finding beauty in your own scars, seeing them not as flaws, but as marks of resilience. That's kintsugi in action, a quirky or fringe tidbit. Some tea masters would deliberately use seemingly flawed or unconventional objects in their ceremonies, not to shock, but to challenge the aesthetic sensibilities of their guests and to encourage a deeper appreciation for wabi-sabi. There are accounts of Rikya using a simple farmer's gourd as a water container, or arranging flowers in an old, unconventional fishing basket. This wasn't about being contrarian. It was a subtle way of saying, look closer. Beauty isn't always where you expect it. Historians still debate the extent to which these were truly radical aesthetic statements versus more pragmatic choices in times of scarcity. Though the philosophical intent seems clear, the quiet simplicity of wabi-sabi provided a powerful antidote to the ostentation and materialism that could often accompany power and wealth. Even among the samurai, in an era where some lords might flaunt extravagant displays of Chinese porcelain, embracing a humble, locally made bowl was an act of profound philosophical statement. It suggested that true richness lay not in accumulated possessions, but in cultivated appreciation, in the ability to find contentment with what is simple and authentic. It was a grounding force, keeping them connected to a deeper, more profound sense of value. Historians still argue whether the widespread adoption of wabi-sabi among the samurai was a genuine spiritual awakening or partly a calculated move to differentiate themselves culturally from the more flamboyant tastes of the court nobility. It's likely a blend, where deep philosophical resonance met practical social signaling. The practice of wabi-sabi also fostered a heightened sense of awareness and observation. When beauty is subtle and imperfect, you have to look more closely, listen more attentively, feel more deeply. You notice the quiet beauty of a shadow, the gentle texture of a surface, the natural grain of wood. This cultivated sensitivity was invaluable for the samurai, honing their ability to perceive nuances, whether in an artistic object or on a battlefield. It taught them to read between the lines, to find meaning in the understated, a skill equally useful in diplomacy and strategy as in aesthetic appreciation for the samurai, who lived in a world where strength was often equated with grand displays and absolute perfection. Wabi-sabi offered a different path to strength, the strength of acceptance, resilience, and finding peace within imperfection. It allowed them to embrace the reality of their existence, flaws and all, and to find quiet dignity in the face of impermanence. It was a profound lesson in letting go of rigid ideals and finding contentment in the natural flow of life, a feeling that can be incredibly soothing as you drift towards a deep and peaceful sleep. Now that you've grasped the quiet beauty of wabi-sabi and the essence of the tea ceremony, let's bring some historical figures into this tranquil space. The development and popularization of chanoyu were not accidental. They were shaped by extraordinary individuals, famous tea masters, who elevated this simple act into a profound art form and a spiritual path. These weren't just skilled artisans. They were philosophers, aesthetes, and sometimes, surprisingly, political figures whose influence extended far beyond the tea room. Imagine a modern-day rock star, but instead of shredding a guitar, they're perfecting the art of whisking matcha. One of the earliest and most pivotal figures in shaping chanoyu into its more contemplative form was Maratha Juk, 1423 to 1502. He's often credited as the father of the tea ceremony as we understand it today. Moving it away from the ostentatious tea competitions we briefly mentioned and towards a more introspective, Zen-infused practice, Juk studied Zen Buddhism under the monk Ikik Sojin, and it was this deep spiritual grounding that informed his approach to tea. He emphasized the concept of wabi, advocating for simplicity and understated elegance over lavish display. He pushed for the use of more rustic, locally produced Japanese ceramics instead of exclusively prized Chinese wares. Think of him as the original minimalist, long before it was cool. Juk's vision was revolutionary. He essentially told the powerful elite, true beauty isn't about how much gold is on your tea bowl. It's about the quiet harmony within the bowl and within yourself. This was a bold statement in a society often defined by outward displays of wealth and status. His teachings laid the groundwork for the more profound philosophical dimensions of chanoyu, however. The tea master who truly solidified chanoyu's place in Japanese culture and arguably its deepest philosophical connection to Zen and wabi-sabi was Sen no Rikya, Iwu RR, Dao Iwu Jo-i. Rikye served as the personal tea master to two of Japan's most powerful and ruthless unifiers, Oda Nobunaga and later Toyotomi Hideyoshi. This alone highlights the tea ceremony's political and social significance. It wasn't just a leisure activity. It was a means of fostering trust, conducting diplomacy, and demonstrating cultural refinement among the most powerful figures in Japan. Imagine the intensity of preparing tea for a warlord who could, on a whim, order your execution. No pressure, right? Rikya perfected the Wabisha style, emphasizing austerity, naturalness, and a deep appreciation for the beauty of imperfection. He designed tea rooms that were deliberately small and humble, such as the famous Taian tea hut, which we discussed earlier, pushing the aesthetic of wabi-sabi to its absolute extreme. He believed that genuine enlightenment could be found in the mundane acts of daily life, including the simple preparation of tea, performed with complete mindfulness. Mainstream historical fact. Sen no Rikya's influence on Japanese culture is immense, extending far beyond the tea ceremony itself. His aesthetic principles deeply shaped subsequent developments in Japanese gardening, architecture, ceramics, and even cuisine. He is considered one of the most influential figures in The History of Japanese Aesthetics, a true visionary who elevated the concept of humble beauty to an art form. His legacy is still felt today. Centuries after his death, Rikie's relationship with Hideyoshi, however, ended tragically. While initially a trusted advisor and friend, their relationship became strained, partly due to Rikyu's unwavering commitment to his wabi-sabi aesthetic, which sometimes clashed with Hideyoshi's preference for grandiosity and ostentatious display. There are various theories about their falling out. Perhaps Rikya's influence became too great. Perhaps he subtly defied Hideyoshi's will. Or perhaps Hideyoshi simply grew tired of Rikya's perceived arrogance or principled stance. Ultimately, Hideyoshi ordered Rikyu to commit seppuku, a quirky or fringe tidbit from this tragic tale. Legend has it that just before his seppuku, Rikyu performed one last perfect tea ceremony for his closest disciples. He prepared the tea, served it, and then broke the chowan he had used, symbolizing the end of his path and ensuring no one else could use it in the same way. He even wrote a death poem, a final expression of his Zen understanding of impermanence. This poignant act underscores the profound significance of the tea ceremony in his life, serving as his final, most profound artistic and spiritual statement. Historians still argue about the exact circumstances and the motivations behind Hideyoshi's command, and how much of Rikye's final ceremony is historical fact versus romanticized legend. But it's a powerful image, isn't it? The ultimate expression of control and serenity in the face of death. Other notable tea masters also contributed to the rich tapestry of chanoyu. Furuta Orib, 1544 to 1615, a samurai who studied under Rikya, developed his own distinct style that was bolder and more unconventional, incorporating dynamic angles and deliberate distortions into his ceramics. His aesthetic was more daring and energetic than Rikyu's austere wabi. He represents the evolving nature of the tea ceremony, where individual expression could still flourish within established traditions. Imagine a student taking their teacher's strict rules and then subtly but artfully bending them. Then there was Kabori Ensher, Ichen Wu Bai Tishijo, Dao Ichen Liu Bai Liu Shi, another samurai and tea master who refined a more formal, elegant style known as kairasabi, or beautiful sabi, while still embracing the worn beauty of sabi. Ensher brought a greater sense of refined taste and classical beauty to the ceremony, bridging the gap between Rikye's extreme austerity and the more decorative tastes of the aristocracy. He designed gardens and tea rooms that balanced natural beauty with meticulous arrangement, creating a sophisticated yet tranquil aesthetic. He was like the elegant bridge between the raw, rustic beauty and refined, polished grace. These tea masters were more than just ceremonial hosts. They were cultural arbiters, deeply respected figures who influenced the aesthetics and philosophical outlook of the samurai class. Their teachings provided a framework for samurai to cultivate not just military prowess, but also inner refinement, emotional intelligence, and a profound appreciation for beauty in all its forms, especially the understated and impermanent. For a samurai, learning from such a tea master was an education in itself. It taught them patience, humility, and the importance of focused attention. It provided a counterbalance to the violence and uncertainty of their lives, offering a pathway to inner peace and self-mastery that was just as rigorous as their martial training, but profoundly different in its aims. It was a testament to the idea that true strength wasn't just about wielding a sword, but about wielding control over one's own mind and spirit. And as you consider the wisdom and artistry of these figures, guiding warriors towards tranquility through a simple bowl of tea, perhaps you can feel their calming influence gently guiding you towards a deep and peaceful sleep. Having delved into the lives of the esteemed tea masters who shaped chanoyu, it's now time to consider one of the most astonishing aspects of the samurai's relationship with the tea ceremony, its presence even on the very edge of life and death. As we explore how tea and warfare surprisingly intertwined, imagine the sheer audacity performing a ritual of profound peace amidst the clamor and chaos of impending battle. It's like finding a quiet, contemplative moment to meditate right in the middle of a bustling, honking traffic jam. For the samurai, the battlefield was their ultimate test, a brutal crucible where their training, their courage, and their loyalty were measured. Yet, even in this most extreme environment, the tea ceremony found a place. This wasn't about leisurely afternoon gatherings. It was about psychological preparation, a demonstration of unshakable composure, and sometimes a final act of serene defiance. Mainstream historical fact. One of the most famous instances of tea and warfare intertwining involves Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the powerful warlord who unified Japan. He was a great patron of the tea ceremony and, notably, held tea gatherings during his military campaigns. A particularly striking example is his Grand Katano tea ceremony in 1587, where he invited everyone, regardless of social status, to partake in tea. While this was a grand public spectacle of his power and cultural sophistication, there are also accounts of him holding smaller, more intimate tea ceremonies for his generals just before major battles. This wasn't just a sign of eccentricity. It was a deliberate strategy. Why would a hardened warrior like Hideyoshi engage in such a delicate ritual on the eve of battle? The reasons are multifaceted. Firstly, it was a potent demonstration of composure and mental fortitude. If a leader could remain utterly calm, focused, and even engage in an act of refined beauty while the enemy massed on the horizon, it sent a powerful message to his own troops. Our leader is not afraid. He is in control. We will prevail. This quiet confidence could be more inspiring than any rousing speech. It's like a general calmly sipping chamomile tea before ordering a charge. Secondly, the tea ceremony offered a moment of profound focus and clarity for the samurai and their generals. In the whirlwind of military strategy, troop deployments, and logistical nightmares, the tea ceremony forced a deliberate slowing down. The meticulous steps, the sensory engagement with the tea, the quietude, allowing the participants to clear their minds, make decisions with greater precision, and approach the coming conflict with a renewed sense of calm determination. It was a tactical pause, a mental sharpening, rather than a mere distraction, a quirky or fringe tidbit. There are tales of samurai carrying compact, portable tea sets, specifically designed for travel or use in the field. These might consist of a small ceramic bowl wrapped in cloth, a bamboo whisk, and a small container of matcha, all tucked away in a simple leather pouch. Imagine a modern soldier packing a miniature espresso maker for a combat deployment. It's that level of dedication to their chosen form of stress relief. Historians still argue how widespread this practice was, but the mere existence of such battlefield tea kits speaks volumes about the value placed on the ritual. Even in the direst circumstances, it's a rather charming, if slightly surreal, image, isn't it? The concept of Zen Buddhism, which, as you recall, deeply influenced chanoyu, also played a crucial role here. Zen taught the acceptance of impermanence and the readiness to face death without fear. For a samurai on the eve of battle, understanding that life was fleeting and that death was a natural part of existence could lead to a profound sense of liberation. The tea ceremony, as a direct application of Zen principles, reinforced this understanding, allowing them to approach the coming conflict with a clear mind, unburdened by attachment or fear. It was a mental preparation, not just for victory, but for whatever outcome the universe had in store. Historians still argue whether the battlefield tea ceremonies were primarily about spiritual readiness or more about projecting an image of calm authority. It was likely a blend of both, as is often the case with human actions, where pragmatism and philosophy intersect. Furthermore, the shared act of participating in a tea ceremony fostered a unique bond among the samurai. It was a moment of shared humanity, a recognition of their common vulnerability and shared destiny, regardless of rank. In the quiet intimacy of the tea space, the rigid hierarchies of the military might momentarily soften. This sense of camaraderie, forged in a moment of peace before violence, could strengthen morale and solidify loyalty. It was a powerful, nonverbal way of saying, we are in this together, and we face it with calm dignity. Consider also the psychological impact on the enemy. Imagine hearing that the opposing general is calmly performing a tea ceremony just hours before an assault. It would likely be disarming, perhaps even unsettling. It projected an image of supreme confidence and mental fortitude, suggesting that their mind was clear, their strategy set, and their resolve unshakable. It was a form of psychological warfare, a subtle act of intimidation that might sow seeds of doubt in the adversary's mind. If they are that calm, what do they know that we don't? Even in besieged castles, where resources were scarce and morale was low, there are accounts of tea ceremonies being performed. In such desperate situations, the ritual wasn't about projecting power, but about preserving sanity. It offered a moment of ritualized order amidst utter chaos, a psychological anchor in a storm of despair. It was a deliberate act of choosing tranquility, of asserting human dignity, even when death was knocking at the gate. It's like tending to a tiny, perfect bonsai tree while your house is crumbling around you. A defiant act of seeking beauty and control in the face of overwhelming odds. The concept of Ichigo Ichi, one time, one meeting, would have been particularly poignant on the battlefield. Each tea ceremony before a conflict was, by its very nature, a unique and unrepeatable moment. For the samurai, it might literally be their last. This heightened awareness of the present moment, of cherishing each sip and each shared glance, would have infused the ceremony with an even deeper, more profound significance. It was a final, precious embrace of life's simple beauty before stepping into the jaws of war. So, the next time you picture a samurai, don't just imagine a fierce warrior with a sword. Imagine that same warrior, moments before battle, kneeling, in quiet contemplation, carefully whisking a bowl of vibrant green tea. This seemingly contradictory image reveals the true depth of their discipline, their search for balance, and their profound understanding that true strength often comes not from aggression, but from an unshakable inner calm. And as you visualize this peaceful ritual on the edge of conflict, perhaps you can feel that same profound sense of tranquility settling within you, gently ushering you towards a deep and restful sleep. You've seen the samurai in their warrior guise, and you've glimpsed them in the quiet focus of the tea room, even on the brink of battle. Now, let's pivot and shine a light on a fascinating, often overlooked aspect of chanoyu, the crucial and inspiring role played by women in the tea tradition. While the image of the male samurai tea master often dominates our historical narrative, women were not merely passive observers. They were practitioners, teachers, patrons, and often the quiet custodians of the tea ceremonies' enduring legacy. It's like discovering that behind every famous male rock star, there was a legion of incredibly talented female musicians who never got their full due. From the earliest periods of tea's adoption in Japan, women were involved. In the courtly circles of the Heian period, 794-1185, noble women enjoyed tea as a refined beverage and a social grace. They participated in elegant tea-tasting parties, contributing to the development of sophisticated aesthetic sensibilities around Teelong. Before it became the rigorous, zen-infused ceremony we now associate with the samurai, these early gatherings were often characterized by poetry, music, and a focus on sensory delights, providing a foundation upon which later tea masters would build. As the tea ceremony evolved under the influence of Zen Buddhism and figures like Marada, Juk, and Sen no Rikya becoming more austere and philosophical, women continued to be involved, albeit sometimes in less public roles than the male tea masters who served powerful warlords. However, their influence was profound, particularly within the home and in the education of future generations. The tea ceremony was seen as an essential accomplishment for women of the upper classes, instilling discipline, grace, and an understanding of refined aesthetics. Mainstream historical fact: during the Edo period, 1603 to 1868, with the establishment of a more stable, peaceful society under the Tokugawa shogunate, the tea ceremony moved beyond being primarily a warrior's pursuit and became widely popular among the merchant class and even commoners. During this period, numerous schools of tea emerged, and many women became highly skilled tea practitioners and even established their own schools. The widespread domestication and popularization of chanoyus, much to the dedication and expertise of these women, they were, in many ways, the unacknowledged cultural bedrock. Women often learned the tea ceremony from a young age, typically as part of their broader education in etiquette, arts, and household management. This education wasn't just about preparing tea. It was about cultivating a refined character, developing an appreciation for beauty, and mastering social graces. The discipline required to perform the ceremony perfectly instilled patience, focus, and a sense of calm under pressure, qualities that were considered admirable in both men and women. Imagine attending a finishing school where the main subject was how to perfectly whisk powdered green tea, and your future social standing depended on it, a quirky or fringe tidbit. There are anecdotes of noble women in the Edo period who were so skilled in the tea ceremony that they could discreetly use it as a means of political communication, conveying subtle messages or forming alliances through the nuances of their tea preparation or the choice of utensils, a specific flower arrangement, a particular scroll, or even the slight angle of a tea bowl could carry hidden meanings understood only by those in the know. This turned the quiet ceremony into a sophisticated, almost covert form of social intelligence. Historians still argue about the frequency and actual impact of such coded messages, but it highlights the subtle power and agency women could wield within these seemingly tranquil confines. Beyond being practitioners, women also served as important patrons of the tea ceremony. Wealthy female aristocrats and wives of samurai lords would commission tea rooms, acquire valuable utensils, and host significant tea gatherings, thereby fostering the tradition and supporting tea masters. Their financial and social backing was crucial for the continued flourishing of chanoyu. They were the quiet investors in culture, ensuring its survival and growth. Historians still debate the extent to which women's involvement in the tea ceremony differed from men's. Was their practice generally more focused on aesthetics and social grace, while men leaned more into the Zen philosophical aspects? Or did they equally embrace all dimensions of the ceremony? It's likely that, like men, their individual approaches varied but broadly. Women's involvement was integral to integrating chanoyu into the fabric of daily life beyond the exclusive circles of male warriors and monks. The tea ceremony, with its emphasis on mindfulness, inner peace, and the appreciation of beauty, provided a unique space for women in a society that often imposed strict societal roles. While they might not have wielded katanas on the battlefield, they mastered a different kind of precision and composure, one that perhaps held even greater long-term cultural significance. In the tea room, their quiet authority as hosts and skilled practitioners was undeniable. Moreover, the principles taught through chanoyu, harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility, were considered essential for a well-ordered household and for fostering peaceful relationships within families and communities. Women, as central figures in the domestic sphere, were therefore crucial in transmitting these values through the daily practice of tea. They instilled these principles in their children, ensuring the legacy of chanoyu and its associated values endured across generations. It's like mothers teaching their children the importance of mindfulness. Through the simple act of setting the dinner table with care, the story of the tea ceremony, therefore, is incomplete without acknowledging the profound contributions of women. They ensured its survival, broadened its appeal, and infused it with their unique grace and sensibility. They were not just the gentle backdrop to male tea masters. They were active participants, innovators, and pillars of the tradition, demonstrating that true mastery and profound influence come in many forms, sometimes in the quietest of gestures. And as you consider these unsung custodians of calm, quietly perfecting their whisking, their composure, and their influence, perhaps you can feel their gentle strength settling around you, guiding you towards a deep and peaceful sleep. Having explored the often unseen but deeply significant role of women in chanoyu, let's now consider how the tea ceremony itself was not a static, unchanging ritual. Like a gentle river carving new paths through the landscape, the tea ceremony adapted, incorporated new ideas, and broadened its appeal, reflecting the changing social, political, and cultural currents of the times. It's a bit like watching a classic piece of music get reinterpreted by different artists over centuries. The core melody remains, but the arrangement shifts subtly, powerfully. We began our journey in the early days. Its introduction from China during the Tang and Song dynasties brought with it the practice of consuming powdered tea. Imagine monks needing to stay awake for long meditation sessions, essentially using tea as an ancient, organic stimulant. This utilitarian phase was the seed from which everything else grew. Then came the shift in the Kamakura period, 1185 to 1333. Tea became more deeply intertwined with Zen monastic life, used as an aid to meditation and a means of promoting focus. This is where the austere, disciplined elements began to solidify. The early tea gatherings were still relatively simple, but the philosophical groundwork was being laid. This was the moment tea started to become more than just a drink. It became a pathway to enlightenment. The Muromachi period, 1336 to 1573, saw a crucial divergence. On one hand, you had the emergence of the tacha or tea competitions that we briefly mentioned, those rather boisterous and even gambling. This was tea as a social event, a status symbol, a demonstration of wealth and connoisseurship. It's like comparing a quiet, meditative yoga class to a flamboyant, celebrity-filled party. On the other hand, during this very same period, figures like Maratha Juk began to champion the concept of wabi-cha, emphasizing simplicity, austerity, and the profound connection to Zen principles from ostentation. This philosophical divide marked a significant turning point process, but it solidified during the tumultuous Sengoku period, mid-15th to early 17th centuries. The emphasis on composure, mindfulness, and the acceptance of impermanence in wabi-cha resonated deeply with the samurai living in an era of constant warfare. Tea became a vital spiritual anchor in a chaotic world. The Azusa Momoyama period, 1568 to 1600, the tail end of the Sengoku era, was arguably the golden age for the development of chanoyu as we know it, largely due to the influence of Senno. Rikya perfected wabi-cha, pushing its aesthetic to its purest, most austere form. His tea rooms were incredibly small and simple, designed to force humility and complete focus on the ritual. He solidified the four principles of harmony: respect, purity, and tranquility. This was the peak of philosophical integration, where every aspect of the ceremony was imbued with deep meaning. Imagine a classical symphony reaching its crescendo. That's Rikya's period for chanoyu. However, even with Rikya's powerful influence, the tea ceremony continued to evolve. After Rikya's tragic death, his students and successors, like Furuta Oribe and Kabori Ensher, began to introduce their own interpretations. Oribe's style was bolder, more experimental, sometimes intentionally asymmetrical or distorted. Ensher's Kayarasabi brought a sense of refined elegance and classical beauty back into the wabi aesthetic, making it more palatable to the broader aristocracy. This shows that even a highly disciplined art form allows for individual expression and stylistic variation. It's like a famous chef's signature dish. Often to curb extravagance, the tea ceremony sometimes became a subtle arena for defiance. While outward displays of wealth might be restricted, a connoisseur could still possess incredibly valuable, yet outwardly humble, tea utensils. A simple, cracked tea bowl, mended with gold, might be worth a fortune, known only to those with discerning eyes. This allowed individuals to express their wealth and refined taste without openly flaunting it. Historians still argue about how consciously these laws impacted the tea aesthetic, or if it was merely a happy coincidence that wabi-sabi lent itself to such discreet displays. With the advent of the long and peaceful Edo period, 1603 to 1868, under the Tokugawa shogunate, Japan experienced unprecedented stability. The samurai class, no longer constantly engaged in warfare, had more time for cultural pursuits. The tea ceremony, along with other arts, flourished. It became a widely practiced social grace, spreading beyond the warrior elite to the merchant class and even among commoners. Numerous schools of tea emerged, each with its own distinct style and lineage, making the ceremony more accessible and varied. This was the period of popularization, where the quiet ritual truly integrated into the daily fabric of Japanese society. Historians still argue whether the tea ceremony maintained its deep philosophical and spiritual core during the Edo periods. Widespread popularization, or if it became more of a social performance and a way to demonstrate cultural knowledge. Likely, it was a mixture of motivations, with the spiritual depth remaining for dedicated practitioners, while others enjoyed its social and aesthetic benefits. In the Meiji period, 1868 to 1912, with Japan's rapid modernization and opening to the West, traditional arts, like the tea ceremony, faced challenges. Many aspects of traditional Japanese culture were seen as outdated. Figures like Okakura Kakuzo, with his influential book of tea published in English in 1906, helped to introduce chanoyu to a Western audience, emphasizing its philosophical and aesthetic value. This period was about resilience and adaptation, ensuring the tradition survived into the modern era today, while its direct connection to the samurai is now primarily historical. Its core principles of mindfulness, it has adapted to modern life, sometimes practiced in urban apartments, a practical aid transformed into a profound spiritual discipline. This journey through time, as the tea ceremony adapted and continued to offer solace, mirrors the subtle and persistent way tranquility can find a path, even through the busiest of minds, gently guiding you towards a deep and peaceful sleep. You've journeyed through the quiet evolution of the tea ceremony, witnessing its transformation from monastic aid to profound art form, adapting through centuries of change. Now, let's bring it full circle to our present day and explore the modern echoes of chanoyu. How do the ancient practices and philosophies of the tea ceremony, honed by samurai and tea masters of old, resonate in contemporary Japanese life and indeed across the globe? It's like finding the enduring melody of a classical symphony subtly woven into a modern film score, recognizable, powerful, and still deeply moving. While most people in modern Japan aren't practicing tea ceremonies every day like the samurai might have, the underlying principles and aesthetics of chanoyu are deeply embedded in the culture. You see its echoes in everything from minimalist interior design to the meticulous presentation of food. from the appreciation of seasonal changes to the emphasis on polite social interactions. It's like the invisible thread that weaves through many aspects of daily life, often unnoticed but always present. Consider the pervasive Japanese aesthetic of simplicity and clean lines, whether it's in architecture, product design, or even graphic art. There's a distinct preference for uncluttered spaces and understated elegance. This directly stems from the wabi-sabi philosophy cultivated in the tea ceremony, which values authenticity, natural materials, and the beauty of imperfection over excessive ornamentation. Your sleek, modern smartphone, with its unadorned surfaces, might inadvertently be channeling a bit of Ricky's aesthetic. The Japanese dedication to craftsmanship and meticulous detail is another strong echo. From the intricate joinery in traditional wooden buildings to the precision of a sushi chef's knife work, there's an almost reverential approach to creating objects and experiences with the highest level of care. This mirrors the extreme precision and devotion given to every single utensil and every single movement in the tea ceremony. It's not just about getting the job done, it's about doing it with profound intention and grace. Imagine the person who wraps your gift so beautifully that you almost don't want to unwrap it. That's the spirit of tea ceremony craftsmanship, finding its way into everyday life. Mainstream historical fact: the principles of Japanese aesthetics, largely influenced by Zen Buddhism and the tea ceremony, have had a significant impact on global design and art, particularly in the 20th and 21st centuries. Concepts like minimalism, sustainable design, and the appreciation of natural materials often draw clear lines back to wabi-sabi and the philosophy of chanoyu. So, that clean-lined furniture you admire from a Scandinavian designer might owe a silent nod to a samurai's tea room. The appreciation for seasonal change is also deeply ingrained in Japanese culture, a trait actively cultivated in the tea ceremony. The choice of tea bowl, the type of flower in the tokonoma, the scroll, even the specific wagashi sweet served, are all carefully selected to reflect the current season. This mindfulness of nature's cycles fosters a deep connection to the environment and a subtle joy in the passing of time. You see this reflected in Japan's seasonal festivals, and even in the changing displays in shop windows. It's a constant, gentle reminder to live in harmony with nature, to truly feel the seasons, a quirky or fringe tidbit, even in bustling, modern Japanese cities. It's not uncommon to find small, almost hidden, traditional tea rooms tucked away on upper floors of buildings or down quiet alleyways. These urban oases offer busy salarymen and women a brief respite from the frenetic pace of city life, a chance to step into a tranquil space and partake in a short tea ceremony during a lunch break or after work. It's like finding a secret garden in the middle of a skyscraper jungle, a quiet nod to the enduring need for calm in a fast-paced world. Historians still argue whether these modern adaptations truly capture the deep spiritual essence of traditional chanoyu, or if they are primarily a form of cultural tourism or stress relief. But either way, they serve a vital purpose. The emphasis on mindfulness and presence cultivated in the tea ceremony is increasingly relevant in our hyper-connected, always-on world. The ceremony taught participants to slow down, to focus on the single task at hand, to be fully present in the moment. In an age of constant digital distractions and multitasking, these ancient lessons are becoming ever more valuable. Many people today seek out meditation, yoga, or other mindfulness practices to combat stress and improve well-being, unknowingly echoing the very path the samurai sought through their tea. Historians still debate whether the current global interest in Japanese aesthetics and mindfulness is a fleeting trend or a fundamental shift towards appreciating deeper, more contemplative practices. However, the enduring popularity of resources on Zen wabi-sabi and even direct tea ceremony classes outside of Japan suggests a genuine thirst for the tranquility these traditions offer beyond aesthetics. The principles of harmony, respect, and purity continue to influence Japanese social interactions and daily routines. The deep respect shown in bowing, the meticulous care in presentation, the emphasis on not causing trouble for others. These are cultural norms that owe a debt to the discipline fostered by practices like chanoyu. It teaches a gentle way of being in the world, of interacting with others with consideration and grace. In a practical sense, tea drinking itself remains central to Japanese culture, though most people drink green tea casually rather than through formal ceremonies. However, the high quality of Japanese tea, the focus on its health benefits, and the continued reverence for its cultivation and preparation demonstrate an ongoing connection to the historical significance of tea. Ultimately, the modern echoes of the tea ceremony are a testament to its timeless wisdom. The samurai, in their pursuit of mental fortitude and inner peace amidst chaos, stumbled upon a practice that continues to offer solace and wisdom to people centuries later. Its emphasis on simplicity, presence, and appreciation for the humble and imperfect resonates deeply in a world often overwhelmed by complexity and relentless pursuit of external perfection. And as you feel these gentle echoes of ancient tranquility settling around you, weaving their quiet influence through your own modern world, perhaps you can feel yourself drifting deeper, softer, into a truly peaceful and restorative sleep. You've journeyed with us through the quiet discipline of the samurai tea ceremony, exploring its Zen roots, its intricate rituals, its serene aesthetics, and its enduring presence in the modern world. Now, as our journey nears its gentle close, let's reflect on the profound, lasting tranquility that this ancient warrior tradition continues to offer, not just to its practitioners, but as a soothing concept for anyone seeking a moment of peace. In their busy lives, it's like finding a still, clear pool in the heart of a bustling forest, a constant source of calm. Always there, waiting. The legacy of the samurai tea ceremony is not merely a historical footnote. It is a powerful testament to the human need for balance. For warriors whose lives were defined by constant tension, vigilance, and the stark reality of life and death, chanoyu offered a vital counterpoint. It was a space and a practice that allowed them to cultivate a different kind of strength, the strength of inner composure, emotional equilibrium, and profound presence. This was not weakness, it was a strategic advantage, allowing them to return to their duties with clearer minds and steadier hands. Imagine, for a moment, the samurai who faced the uncertainty of battle, the political intrigues, the personal losses. How did they endure? The tea ceremony provided a crucial answer. It taught them to find beauty in imperfection, wabi-sabi, to accept the transient nature of existence, and to locate profound meaning in simple, everyday acts. By meticulously preparing and sharing a bowl of tea, they were not just drinking a beverage. They were engaging in a profound act of self-care, a disciplined meditation that quieted the chaos within. It's like finding your own small, perfect ritual at the end of a long, stressful day. Perhaps a cup of herbal tea, a few minutes of quiet reading, or simply listening to a favorite calming sound. Mainstream historical fact: the principles and practices of the tea ceremony, initially developed within a specific historical and cultural context, have transcended those origins to become globally recognized as a path to mindfulness and aesthetic appreciation. Today, people from diverse backgrounds study chanoyu, not necessarily to become samurai, but to cultivate inner peace, develop patience, and connect with a rich cultural heritage. This widespread adoption is proof of its timeless and universal appeal. The core tenets of chanoyu: harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility, as relevant today as they were centuries ago. Harmony, fostering balance between oneself and others, and with nature. Respect, acknowledging the dignity in all beings and objects. Purity, cleansing not just the physical space, but also the mind of clutter and negativity. And ultimately, tranquility, the profound peace that arises from the integration of these principles. These aren't just abstract concepts. They are actionable guides for living a more peaceful, centered life. A quirky or fringe tidbit: there's a lesser-known anecdote about a samurai, renowned for his fierce prowess in battle, who, in his later years, dedicated himself entirely to the tea ceremony. When asked which skill was harder to master, the sword or the whiskey, reportedly smiled and said, "The sword strikes down external foes. The whisk quietens the internal ones. The whisk is far more challenging." This whimsical tale, whether true or not, beautifully encapsulates the ultimate inner battle that chanoyu helped them to win. Historians still argue whether this quote is authentic or a later embellishment, but it certainly offers a powerful perspective. The enduring appeal of the tea ceremony lies in its ability to offer a tangible escape from the modern world's relentless demands. In a society that often glorifies speed, efficiency, and constant connection, chanoyu champions slowness, intentionality, and disconnection. It invites you to step out of the frantic pace, even for a brief moment, and immerse yourself fully in the present. This practice of unplugging and truly being present is a profound gift, one that the samurai instinctively understood was vital for mental and spiritual resilience. Historians still debate whether the current emphasis on the tea ceremony as primarily a mindfulness practice overshadows its historical, social, and aesthetic functions. However, there's no denying that its spiritual benefits are what resonates most deeply with contemporary audiences. Seeking calm in a noisy world, think about the sheer power of focus. In a world of multitasking and splintered attention, demands absolute, unwavering focus on one thing: the preparation and consumption of tea. This singular focus, practiced repeatedly, trains the mind to become less prone to distraction, more capable of deep concentration. For a samurai, this enhanced focus translated directly to battlefield effectiveness. For us, it translates to reduced stress and greater clarity in our daily lives. The gentle humor woven into our journey tonight The subtle smiles at the samurai's paradoxical pursuits are themselves a small echo of the lightheartedness that even serious Zen practices can hold. The ability to find a quiet smile amidst the solemnity, to not take oneself too seriously, is another subtle lesson offered by these ancient traditions. As our narrative gently unwinds, consider how you might incorporate even the smallest echoes of chanoyu into your own life. Perhaps it's a mindful approach to making your morning coffee, a deliberate moment of quiet appreciation for a simple meal, or just a few moments of intentional breathing before you drift off to sleep. The lasting tranquility of the samurai tea ceremony isn't just for history books. It's a gift, a soft whisper from the past, inviting you to find your own quiet strength, your own inner peace. And so, we leave the meticulous tea room, the serene gardens, and the disciplined warriors behind. The scent of matcha fades, the gentle whisking sound recedes, and the soft glow of the lantern dims. You have experienced a journey into profound calm, a glimpse into a world where even the fiercest warriors sought solace in the quietest of rituals. May the tranquility of this ancient tradition settle deep within you, soothing your mind and body, preparing you for a night of deep, restorative sleep.